Shalom Chavarim, welcome to this week's Word Study, where we continue in our study of Bereshith, that's Genesis. And today we're going from chapter 22 through chapter 25, verse 10, and we will stop there because that's where the storyline shifts. And that includes taking a look at Avraham's test with Yahweh. And also, then we move on to take a look at Yitschaq and Rivqah. That's Isaac and Rebekah. But before we begin, of course, let's pitch our tents with Elohim. Let's bow our hearts. Dear beloved Abba, Father, we come before you this day, Abba, to partake once again of your beloved word, your precious word. Beloved and precious Father, because of our being aware of how it's changing us, of how it washes us clean, of the darkness that's all around us all the time in this world. We thank you so much, Father, for leading us onto the narrow path, the way, for showing us, Father, how to find the way, and that narrow path that so few find, so few even look to find, that leads to you. As we give this day, Father, and every day, to you, your beloved Yachid, Yeshua, our Adon, and your indwelling Ruach HaKodesh, praying in Yeshua's Kodesh name, Yahuwah, Yahweh, our Elohim, Yahweh Echad. Amen. After these things, Elohim put Avraham's trust and commitment to a test, saying to him, Avraham. And he answered, Here I am. And Elohim said, Take now your son, your Yachid, meaning your one and only unique son of promise, your one and only legal heir. Note, here, Chavarim, we see the very first mention in Yahweh's word of Yachid. And as I've told you before, the first mention always gives a special meaning for us to meditate on. Now, although nearly every English Bible version on earth translates Yachid, seen here, they translate it as only son. And that includes the HalleluYah Scriptures, I'm sorry to say. Only son is such a poor interpretation. It truly makes me wonder what kind of men gave us these English Bibles. I don't understand it. I absolutely don't understand it. There is but one lone exception that I know of, and that is the International Standard Version, which accurately translates Yachid as unique son. Wow. Kudos to the translators of the lone ISV, a version I have to admit I'm not familiar with, but if I see a copy, I may take a closer look at it at this point. They're the only ones that say unique son. Only son it's ridiculous. It's a poor interpretation, and I say that because Yitschaq was in no way Avraham's only son. Why would they do that and give everyone the wrong, not only the wrong impression, but they're adding to and taking away from Yahweh's word? I mean, how can they do that? They've been commissioned to translate his word. I know the NIV, they had 70 scholars. 70 scholars! And they let things like this and even worse things happen. Forgive me, don't let me get started. This stuff irritates me so much, my friends. I can't tell you. Avraham also fathered Yishmael by Sarah's Shivka, Hagar. What Yahweh's word truly says is that Yitschaq was Avraham's one and only Yachid. That is, his one and only unique son of promise. And that is to say that Yitschaq was Avraham's one and only legal heir. Once again, and properly this time, Elohim said, "Take now your son, your Yachid, whom you love, Yitschaq, and go to the region of Moriah, and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains of which I will tell you." Note, as I've said in a good number of videos, the first appearance of any particular word always gives us a special bit of insight. And here we see another first appearance, this time the first appearance of the word love. And it's all about Yachid, pointing at, really, Yahweh's Yachid, Yeshua, our Mashiach, our Adon. Also, Moriah was the mount on the eastern edge of Yerushalayim, Jerusalem, the very place, the exact place where Yeshua was crucified, and the exact place where Solomon built the temple. Continuing, so Avraham got up early in the morning, saddled his donkey, and took 2 of his young men with him and his son Yitschaq. And he split the wood for the burnt offering, and then he got up and went to the place of which Elohim had told him. On the 3rd day of travel, Avraham looked up and saw the place, far off in the distance. And Avraham said to his servants, "Settle down and stay here with the donkey. The young man and I will go over there and worship Elohim, and we will come back to you." And Avraham took the wood for the burnt offering and laid it on the shoulders of Yitschaq, his son. And he took a fire pot filled with burning coals in his own hand, and the knife, and the 2 of them walked on together. Note, just as Yeshua carried the stake for his own crucifixion, in the same way, Yitschaq carried the wood for his own execution. Continuing, then Yitschaq said to Avraham, "Abba." And he said, "Here I am, my son." And Yitschaq said, "Look, the fire and the wood, but where's the lamb for the burnt offering?" And Avraham said, "My son, Elohim will provide for himself a lamb for the burnt offering." And the 2 walked on together, that is to say, in agreement. Note, Avraham had complete trust in Elohim. Look at Ephraim, Hebrews, chapter 11, verses 17 through 19. And because Elohim's covenant with him depended on Yitschaq, Avraham anticipated that Elohim would reveal to him an alternative to the sacrifice of Yitschaq. And as we will soon see, he did just that. Continuing, when they came to the place of which Elohim had told him, Avraham built an altar there and arranged the wood, and bound Yitschaq his son, and placed him on the altar on top of the wood. And then Avraham reached out his hand and took the knife to shachat, his son. Note the Aramaic Hebrew verb shachat refers to a ritual sacrificial procedure by which the blood flows straight to the ground. Continuing, but the Malach of Yahuwah, we know who that is now, right? Yeshua. Again, but the Malach of Yahuwah called to him from the Shamayim and said, Avraham, Avraham. And Avraham answered, Here I am. And the Malach of Yahuwah said, Do not reach out with the knife in your hand against the boy, and do nothing to harm him. For now I know that you, Yirah Elohim, with reverence and profound respect, since you have not withheld from me your son, your one and only Yachid. Note, as we will see more than once, the Malach of Yahuwah, Yeshua, speaks, calling out to Avraham, but it is Yahuwah who does the talking, saying, You have not withheld from me your one and only Yachid. We see this in the Gospels where Yeshua says, I only say what the Father tells me to say. I only do what the Father tells me to do. And we also see it with the Ruach HaKodesh, who never speaks on his own. He only speaks what the Father and or Yeshua tell him to say. Now I have a video about the true meaning of Yirah, usually and improperly translated as fear. Yirah speaks of reverence and oftentimes worship. You'll see the link for that video in the Read More section below. Continuing, then Avraham looked up and glanced around, and behold, behind him was a ram caught in a thicket by his horns. And Avraham went and took the ram and offered it up for a burnt offering instead of his son. And so Avraham named that place Yahweh Yireh, meaning Yahweh will provide. And it is said to this day, on the mountain of Yahweh it will be seen and provided. Note, this is a prophetic statement which looks ahead to the fact that the Mashiach, the Yachid of Yahweh, would be the ultimate sacrifice chosen and provided by Abba Father Yahweh. And this model of the sacrifice of Yahweh's Yachid, Yeshua, goes even deeper, Chavarim. If we count the days from the time Yahweh told Avraham to do this, until the time that the ram appeared, we could say, metaphorically, that Yitschaq, just like Yeshua, was dead for 3 days. Continuing, and the Malach of Yahuwah called to Avraham from the Shamayim a second time and said, By myself, on the basis of who I am, I have sworn an oath, declares Yahweh, that since you have done this thing and have not withheld from me your son, your one and only Yachid, I will greatly barach you, and I will greatly multiply your descendants like the stars of the Shamayim and like the sand on the seashore. And your seed will possess the gate of their enemies as conquerors. Through your seed, all the nations of the earth will be Baruch, because you have heard and obeyed my voice. And Avraham returned to his servants, and they got up and went with him to Bereshith. And Avraham settled in Bereshith. Note, where is Yitschaq? Here, Chavarim, we see a model of the net chatef. After the scene of the sacrificial ram, we see no mention of Yitschaq again until chapter 24, verse 62, when his Gentile bride is brought to him by Eliezer, whose name, by the way, means comforter. See it? After Yahweh's Yachid Yeshua completes his work as the sacrificial lamb of Yahweh, he leaves the earth and is not seen again until his bride is brought to him by the comforter. The Ruach HaKodesh is the comforter. And here, packed away in Yahweh's word, is this hidden message. Yitschaq, metaphorically dead for 3 days. You don't see him again until later, when the comforter, Eliezer, brings his Gentile bride to him. Continuing. Now after these things, Avraham was told, Milcah has borne children to your brother Nahor, Uts the firstborn, and Buz his brother, and Kemuel the father of Aram, Kesed, and Chazo, and Pildash, and Yidlaph, and Bethuel. And Bethuel became the father of Rivqah, Rebekah. These 8 children Milcah bore to Nahor, Abraham's brother, and Nahor's Pilegesh, whose name was Reumah, gave birth to Tevach, and Gacham, and Tachash, and Ma'acha. Note, a Pilegesh, what we would call a concubine, was a type of secondary wife, often a slave, much lower in rank than the official wife who managed the household and gave birth to the legitimate children. The Pilegesh, we saw this with Sarah's Shivka. The Pilegesh had marginal rights to financial support and recognition, and their children were usually acknowledged as offspring of the man, but were of lower status than the children born to the official wife. Continuing, Sarah lived 127 years. This was the length of the life of Sarah. And Sarah died in Kiriath Arba, that is, Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And Avraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep for her. And Avraham stood up before his dead wife's body and spoke to the sons of Heth, that is, the Hittites. Note, the Hittites, along with the Egyptians and the Assyrians, were among the great powers in the ancient Middle East. They were famous for their fine horses, many of which were acquired by Solomon through trade. They also discovered and held secret the process of smelting iron when iron was treasured almost as much as gold. These Hittites were of Indo-European origin. The relationship, if any, between these Anatolian Hittites and the descendants of Canaan's son Heth is unclear. Again, Avraham stood up before his dead wife's body and spoke to the sons of Heth, saying, I am a stranger and a sojourner among you. Grant me property for a burial place among you, so that I may bury my dead in the proper manner. And the Hittites replied to Avraham, Listen to us, Adon. You are a prince of Elohim, a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our graves. None of us will refuse you his grave or hinder you from burying your dead wife. So Avraham stood up and bowed to the people of the land, the Hittites. And Avraham said to them, If you are willing to grant my dead wife a proper burial, listen to me and plead with Ephron, the son of Sochar, for me, so that he may grant me the cave of Machpelah, which he owns. It is at the end of this field. Let him give it to me here in your presence for the full price as a burial site, which I may keep forever among you. Now Ephron was present there among the sons of Heth. So within the hearing of all the sons of Heth and all who were entering the gate of his city, Ephron the Hittite answered Avraham, saying, No, Adon, hear me. I give you the entire field, and I also give you the cave that is in it. In the presence of the men of my people, I grant it to you. Bury your dead there. Note, this was not an offer to give the land to Avraham as a gift. It was simply part of the negotiating process of their day. Continuing, Then Avraham bowed down before the people of the land and said to Ephron in the presence of the people of the land, If you will only please listen to me and accept my offer, I will give you the price of the field, accept it from me, and I will bury my dead there. And Ephron replied to Avraham, Adon, listen to me. The land you seek is worth 400 shekels of silver. What is that between you and me? Go, bury your dead. And Avraham listened to Ephron and agreed to his terms. And he weighed out for Ephron the amount of silver which he had named in the hearing of the Hittites, 400 shekels of silver, according to the weights current among the merchants. And the field of Ephron in Machpelah, which was to the east of Mamre in Hebron, the field and the cave which was in it, and all the trees that were in the field and in all its borders around it, were legally deeded over to Avraham as his possession in the presence of the Hittites, before all who were entering at the gate of his city. After this, Avraham buried Sarah his wife in the cave of the field of Machpelah, to the east of Mamre, in Hebron, in the land of Canaan. And the field and the cave in it were deeded over to Avraham by the Hittites as a permanent possession and burial place. Note, Avraham and Sarah, Yitschaq and Rivqah, Yaakov and Leah, were all buried in the field of Machpelah, as we can see in chapter 49, verse 31, and in chapter 50, verse 13. Continuing, now Avraham was old and well advanced in age, and Yahweh had baruch Avraham in all things. And Avraham said to his servant Eliezer of Damascus, the oldest of his household, who had charge over all that Avraham owned, Please put your hand under my thigh. Note, this was a customary act for affirming a solemn oath. The Aramaic Hebrew word here is shavah, meaning 7, as in Shabbat. This act of putting your hand under someone else's thigh meant that you were swearing 7 times. Continuing, please put your hand under my thigh, and I will make you swear by Yahweh, the Elohim of the Shamayim, and the Elohim of the earth, that you will not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I live, but you will instead go to my former country, Aram Naharaim, that is Mesopotamia, and to my relatives, and take a wife for my son Yitschaq, Avraham's Yachid and heir of the covenant promise. And the servant said to him, suppose the woman will not be willing to follow me back to this country. Should I take your son back to the country from which you came? And Avraham said to him, see to it that you do not take my son back there. Note, here's another model, Chavrim. When Yeshua returns to the land of his bride, to the earth, it's the day of his wrath. His bride is brought to him by the Comforter before he returns to the earth, before the day of his wrath. You know, when Yeshua comes to take those chosen for him by Yahweh in the Net Chetef, he does not come back to the earth. He's in the Shamayim. So again, Yeshua's bride is brought to him by the Comforter, the Ruach HaKodesh, before he returns to the earth, before the day of his wrath. And this is why we see Avraham saying, no, if she won't come to him, don't take him back there, because that's not Yahweh's model. That's not what actually happens. And Yahweh's word is true in 1,000 ways. Continuing. Yahweh, the Elohim of the Shamayim, who took me from my father's house, from the land of my family and my birth, who spoke to me and swore to me, saying, to your descendants I will give this land. He will send his malach before you to guide you, and you will take a wife from there for my son and bring her here. If the woman is not willing to follow you to this land, then you will be free from my oath and blameless. Only you must never take my son back there. So the servant put his hand under the thigh of Avraham, his Adon, and swore to him concerning this matter. And the servant took 10 of his Adon's camels and set out, taking some of his Adon's good things with him. So he got up and journeyed to Aram Naharaim, meaning Aram of the 2 rivers, today's Mesopotamia, between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers, to the city of Nahor, the home of Avraham's brother. And he made the camels kneel down outside the city by the well of water at the time of the evening, when women go out to draw water. And then he prayed, O Yahweh, Elohim of my Adon Avraham, please grant me success today, and show loving kindness to my Adon Avraham. Behold, I stand here at the spring of water, and the daughters of the men of the city are coming out to draw water. Now let it be that the girl to whom I say, 'Please, let down your jar so that I may have a drink,' and she replies, 'Drink, and I will also give your camels water to drink,' may she be the one whom you have selected as a wife for your servant Yitschaq. And by this I will know that you have shown loving kindness to my Adon." Note, here's an instruction for us, Havarim. When you pray on something, pray for conditions of confirmation. Continuing. And before Eliezer had finished praying, Rivqah, that's Rebekah, Rivqah came out with her water jar on her shoulder. Note, Elohim often answers prayers this way, Chavarim. Take some time today to think about this. Again, before Eliezer had finished praying, Rivqah came out with her water jar on her shoulder. Rivqah was the daughter of Bethuel, the son of Milcah, who was the wife of Avraham's brother Nahor. And the girl was very beautiful, a virgin and unmarried. And she went down to the spring, filled her jar, and came back up. And then Eliezer ran to meet her and said, "Please, let me drink a little water from your jar." And she said, "Drink, Adon." And she quickly lowered her jar to her hand and gave him a drink. And when she had given Eliezer a drink, she said, "I will also draw water for your camels until they have finished drinking." And she quickly emptied her jar into the watering trough and ran again to the well and drew water for all his camels. Meanwhile, Eliezer stood gazing at Rivqah in reverent silence, waiting to know if Yahweh had made his journey prosperous or not. And when the camels had finished drinking, Eliezer took a gold ring weighing a half shekel, and 2 bracelets for her hands weighing 10 shekels in gold. Note, here's another model. Eliezer is a model of the Comforter, the Ruach HaKodesh, right? The Comforter is the Ruach HaKodesh. And the Ruach HaKodesh gives Yeshua's bride gifts, the gifts of the Ruach. Again, when the camels had finished drinking, Eliezer took a gold ring weighing a half shekel, and 2 bracelets for her hands weighing 10 shekels in gold, and said, "Whose daughter are you? Please tell me, is there room in your father's house for us to lodge?" And she said to him, "I'm the daughter of Bethuel, Milcah's son, whom she bore to her husband Nahor." And again she said to him, "We have plenty of both straw and feed, and also room to lodge." And Eliezer bowed and worshipped Yahweh and said, "Baruch be Yahweh, the Elohim of my Adon Avraham, who has not denied his loving kindness and his truth to my Adon. As for me, Yahweh led me to the house of my Adon's brothers." And then young Rivqah ran and told her mother's household what had happened. Now Rivqah had a brother whose name was Lavan, and Lavan ran out to the man at the well. And when he saw the ring and the bracelets on his sister's arms, and when he heard Rivqah, his sister, saying, "The man said this to me," he went to Eliezer and found him standing by the camels at the spring. And Lavan said, "Come in, Baruch of Yahweh. Why do you stand outside, since I have made the house ready and have prepared a place for the camels?" So Eliezer came into the house, and Laban unloaded his camels and gave them straw and feed. And he gave water to Eliezer to wash his feet and the feet of the men who were with him. But when food was set before him, he said, I will not eat until I have stated my business. And Laban said, Go ahead and speak. And he said, I am Avraham's servant. Yahweh has greatly Baruch my Adon, and he has become a great man, very wealthy and powerful. Yahweh has given him flocks and herds and silver and gold and servants and maids and camels and donkeys. And Sarah, my Adon's wife, bore a son to my Adon when she was in her old age, and he has given everything that he has to him. And my Adon made me swear an oath, saying, You must not take a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites in whose land I live, but you will instead go to my father's house and to my family and take a wife for my son, Yitschaq. And then I said to my Adon, But suppose the woman will not follow me back to this land. And he said to me, Yahweh, before whom I habitually and obediently walk, will send his malach with you to make your journey successful. And you will take a wife for my son from my relatives and from my father's house. Then you will be free of my oath when you come to my relatives, and if they do not give her to you, you will be free of my oath. So I came today to the spring and prayed, saying, O Yahweh, Elohim of my Adon Avraham, if now you will make my journey on which I go successful, please look, I'm standing by the spring of water. Let it be that when the maiden whom you have chosen for Yitschaq comes out to draw water, and to whom I say, Please give me a little water to drink from your jar, and if she says to me, You drink, and I will also draw water for your camels, let that woman be the one whom Yahweh has selected and chosen as a wife for my Adon's son. And before I had finished praying in my heart, behold, Rivqah came out with her water jar on her shoulder, and she went down to the spring and drew water. And I said to her, Please, let me have a drink. And she quickly let down her jar from her shoulder and said, Drink, and I will also water your camels. So I drank, and she also watered the camels. And then I asked her, Whose daughter are you? And she said, The daughter of Bethuel, Nahor's son, whom Milcah bore to him. And I put the ring in her nose and the bracelets on her arms. Note, this was a regular and customary act of admiration and respect. Otherwise, Rivqah would not have accepted the gifts. Continuing, And I bowed and worshipped Yahweh and Baruch Yahweh, the Elohim of my Adon Avraham, who had led me in the right way to take the daughter of my Adon's brother to his son as a wife. And now, if you are going to show kindness and truth to my Adon, tell me. And if not, tell me, so that I may turn to the right or to the left and go on my way. Then Laban and Bethuel answered, This matter has come forth from Yahweh, so we dare not speak bad or good to you about it. That is, we cannot interfere. Rivqah is before you. Take her and go, and let her be the wife of your Adon's son, as Yahweh has declared. And when Avraham's servant heard their words, he bowed himself to the ground and worshipped Yahweh. Then Eliezer brought out jewelry of silver, jewelry of gold, and articles of clothing, and gave them to Rivqah. And he also gave precious things to her brother and to her mother. And then he and the men who were with him ate and drank and spent the night there. And in the morning, when they got up, he said, "Now send me back to my Adon." But Rivkah's brother and mother said, "Let the girl stay with us a few days, at least 10, and then she may go." But Eliezer said to them, "Do not delay me, since Yahweh has prospered my way. Send me away so that I may go back to my Adon." And they said, "We will call the girl and ask her what she prefers." Note, my friends, this is another model of, the bride of Yeshua. They make their own choice to go with Yeshua or not. Continuing. And they called Rivkah and said, "Will you go with this man?" And she answered, "I will go." And so they sent off their sister Rivkah and her nurse, and Avraham's servant Eliezer and his men. They baruch Rivkah and said to her, "May you, our sister, become the mother of thousands of millions, and may your descendants possess the city gate of those who hate them." And then Rivkah and her attendants stood. Note, the Aramaic Hebrew verb to stand is often used as an instruction to all present to prepare to fulfill a command, kind of like the military command of attention. Again, Rivkah and her attendants stood. And they mounted camels and followed Eliezer. And Eliezer took Rivkah and went on his way. Note, another model, Chavarim, the bride of Yeshua stands before all as the bride makes the decision to love Elohim and not the world. The bride decides and then leaves and never returns, just like Rivkah. Continuing. Now Yitschaq had returned from going to Be'er Lachai Roi, for he was living in the Negev. And Yitschaq went out to bow down in prayer in the field in the early evening. And when he raised his eyes and looked, he saw the camels were coming. And Rivkah also raised her eyes and looked. And when she saw Yitschaq, she dismounted from her camel, for she had said to Eliezer, "Who is that man there walking across the field to meet us?" And Eliezer said, "He is my Adon, Yitschaq." And she took her veil and covered herself, as was customary. And Eliezer told Yitschaq everything that he had done. And then Yitschaq brought Rivkah into his mother Sarah's tent, and he took Rivkah in marriage, and she became his wife, and he loved her. And therefore Yitschaq was comforted after his mother's death. Now Avraham took another wife whose name was Keturah, and she gave birth to Zimran, Yokshan, Medan, Midian, Yishbak, and Shuach. And Yokshan was the father of Sheva and Dedan. The sons of Dedan were Ashuri, Letushim, and Leumim. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Chanoch, Avidah, and Eldaah. All these were the sons of Keturah. And Avraham gave everything that he had to Yitschaq. Note, as Avraham's Yachid, Yitschaq was entitled to at least a double share of his father's estate. But here we have another model, Chavarim. Just as Yahweh made his Yachid, Yeshua, heir of everything he owns, Avraham does the very same with his Yachid, Yitschaq. Again, Avraham gave everything that he had to Yitschaq. But to the sons of his Pilegesh, Hagar and Keturah, Avraham gave gifts while he was still living, and he sent them to the east country away from Yitschaq, his Yachid. And the days of Avraham's life were 175 years. Avraham breathed his last breath, and he died at a good old age, an old man who was satisfied with life. And he was gathered to his people, to those who had preceded him in death. And his sons, Yitschaq and Yishmael, buried him in the cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Tzochar the Hittite, which is east of Mamre, the field which Avraham purchased from the sons of Heth. There Avraham was buried with Sarah, his wife. Note, Yitschaq and Yishmael attended the funeral and buried the hatchet for their father's sake. Each had 12 sons, 12 tribes each. Yitschaq was 75 years old, and Yishmael was nearly 90 years old when Avraham died. Next week, Chavarim, we will be looking at Yaakov and Esau, who at this time were 15 years old and probably present for the burial at Machpelah. And that concludes our study for this week. Let's bow our hearts. Dear beloved Abba Father, we come before you, Father, to praise you and to thank you for today's time in your word. We pray and ask, Abba, that you continually speak to us, giving us greater revelation time and time again about the things that we are seeing in your word. Greater revelations, Father, about why you reveal these things in your word to begin with. We thank you, Abba, for each and every time that you do these things with us as we give this day, Father, to you, Yeshua, and Ruach HaKodesh, as we do every day, praying in the name of your beloved Yachid, our Adon, Yeshua, that name being Yahweh, Yahweh, our Elohim, Yahweh Echad. Amen. And Chavarim, Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week as we continue this wonderful study. As always, I hope and I pray that these studies are a continual berachah to you and yours. Until then, Shalom, Chavarim.
Now 2,000 years have gone by, it's another working day. Some would rather let it lie, but the question still remains.